So, Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to move and ask Honorable Sifuna, who was also a member of this committee, to second this motion. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sifuna.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Just like Senator Mungatana, I was extremely honored to be nominated by this House to represent the Senate in this mediation. In defense of devolution, Honorable Speaker, I cannot have asked for greater allies to go to war, if I might use that term, with the National Assembly on this particular issue. I want to take this opportunity to thank the chairperson of our budget committee, the Honorable Senator Captain Ali Roba, for providing very robust leadership of the Senate team. Of course, the Senator for Mombasa, Mwenye Haji Faki, and Veronica Maina, together with Richard Onyonka, Senator Matinga, who is my chair of energy, Senator Mungatana, and Senator Eddie Okech. Because it was my first time, Honorable Speaker, in a mediation such as this, I honestly would not want to be in a different team other than this one. Because when we met the members of the National Assembly, they had also sent a very strong team, and they kept reminding us at every turn that many of them were PhDs and doctors, and economists like the Honorable Makali Mulu, doctor, who kept reminding us that we may be lawyers, we might see certain things, but when it comes to figures and numbers, we need to take a back seat and listen to him. So it was a very interesting exercise, Honorable Speaker. But one of the things that we could agree upon, especially as a Senate, and as I said yesterday during debate on the President's State of the Nation address, it is very easy to agree on other things once you agree on principles. And Honorable Speaker, I can be very proud of the position that this Senate took, that there are certain principles we laid on the table from the onset of this mediation. The first principle, Honorable Chair, was that counties must never in any financial year receive money less than what they received in the preceding financial year. And we were able to convince members of the National Assembly on this important principle. Number two, Honorable Speaker, because of inflationary trends and other things that crop up, including growth in annual wages, there has always to be year on year an increment in the allocation to counties, even if it be marginal in exceptional years such as this, when we do not have a finance act in place. Honorable Speaker, the third principle that we agreed upon, we were able to convince our colleagues from the National Assembly, is that the shortfalls, any shortfalls in revenue, can never be borne by the county governments, because the national government has more headroom in terms of its budgeting. And the most important principle being, it is them who draw up these estimates. It is the National Treasury that comes up with these estimates, and you will remember that during that particular process, county governments have absolutely no role. So it is for them to make sure that if they project revenues and there are shortfalls, that burden cannot be borne by county governments. And I believe, having agreed and set those three principles, it is going to be very easy going forward, Honorable Speaker, for us to agree on this process of division of revenue. Honorable Speaker, there was also a very interesting conversation because sometimes members of the National Assembly feel that we accuse them of not understanding the needs of the county governments and the need for them to serve the people. One of the things we agreed in this mediation was that there are no Kenyans who belong to county governments and Kenyans who belong to the national government. That all Kenyans belong to all these governments, the 47 county governments and the national government. And that in fact, your ordinary Kenyan, the people of Mathare, a voter in Mathare, does not care who comes to repair a bridge that has been damaged after a flood. They just want the bridge done. So this backpassing and blame just want work to be done. And it was interesting because that conversation was being had roads. Honorable Speaker, it is an acknowledged fact that there are certain classes of roads that belong to county governments or are the responsibility of county governments. And this tussle between the National Assembly and the county governments does not help anyone. Honorable Speaker, you live in Nairobi, and you all the time remind me that your children voted for me. They are complaining, Honorable Speaker, about the state of the roads in Nairobi. Everybody is complaining about the state of the roads in Nairobi, all across.
Senator Sifuna, I live in Meru, where you are. I live in Meru. My children go to school in Nairobi and live in Nairobi.
I'm guided, Honorable.
And all means in the Meru
Honorable
community that I live in Nairobi.
Honorable Speaker, okay, we are very proud as a county because we know we host all the senators wherever they come from, and complaints have been raised about the state of the roads in all of our areas. Honorable Speaker, in Kilibani, in Hurlingham, you go to Isili, the state of the roads in Pipeline, in other areas of Nairobi is so bad, and every time you bring this question up, the governors are always going to hide behind the dispute of the RMLF. In fact, yesterday, Honorable Chair, we had the opportunity to sit with the chair of the Transport Committee of the Council of Governors, the Honorable Governor for Wajir, Ahmed Abdullahi. And you know, during the mediation, the members of the National Assembly gave us as a Senate an assignment to take a message to the Council of Governors that if it were possible for them to sit down and have a discussion and try to mediate that issue out of the courts, it would be helpful to the common Wananchi. I want to report to the members of this House and the members of the National Assembly need to know that we did take that message to the chairperson of the Transport Committee of the Council of Governors. But he was very skeptical, I have to say this, because he has said that this is not the first time this question of the RMLF was taken to courts, and the last time there was a conversation to withdraw the matter or to solve it amicably, it didn't go very well. So at least to the members of the National Assembly who sent us, who gave me that assignment to deliver the message, as a messenger, I've done my part, and I've also given you the feedback that we received from the Council of Governors. Honorable Speaker, allow me to also say that in the course of those proceedings, we in the Senate raised very serious objections about the separation of powers between the three arms of government. We want to continue to urge members of Parliament especially to remember that the law-making process and the budget-making process is a constitutional responsibility of Parliament. And we must never appear to cede that responsibility to any other arm of government, and especially not to the executive. Honorable Speaker, you will know that whenever we are handling a matter in this House, even the judiciary itself has taken a position of waiting for the process in this House to conclude before they can intervene. And when a matter is before the judiciary, we in Parliament as well don't touch it because of the sub judice rule in our own standing orders. Honorable Chair, therefore it was quite disheartening to hear pronouncements being made in the course of the mediation by members of the executive about this mediation and the figures that were viable or not viable. I want members of Parliament to remember that we swore an oath to defend the Constitution, and it is the Constitution that gives us, as Parliament, power to make legislation and power to also make the budget of this country. So that, Honorable Speaker, we should not essentially be one with the executive. In fact, sometimes I feel terrible for the leadership of the executive because they are supposed to get ideas from Parliament and to be guided as well. But if we are a house that only waits for the president to say, we go left and we go left, we go right and we go right. If today he says this house is bad, we all clap and say it's bad. If he says we are now good boys, we all stand up and clap. It's not supposed to be like that. We are doing a disservice to the head of state. And I want to encourage him. I think now he knows. I think now the head of state, Honorable Speaker.
I cannot see an intervention on a point of order. Proceed, Senator Sifuna, I can't see.
Yes, Honorable Speaker, the point that I was making was that the head of state now, in this institution of Parliament, should note the voices to listen to. I think he should spend more time with Senator Onyonka. He might be able to guide him more better than some of the voices he's listening to in the House, because they are not telling him the truth. Honorable Speaker, let me conclude by saying that the mediated amount might not be pleasant to the Council of Governors, might not be what this House wanted, because I remember when we were dispatched to this mediation, we were given very clear instructions that we must not accept anything less than the 400 billion that we had passed. We had many objections ourselves, including myself, during debate of this particular bill, but I want to say that the purpose of mediation is not to get your way. The purpose of mediation is to have a conversations with people who hold a different view and to come to some form of middle ground. I want the House to view this as the Senate saving 7 billion shillings for devolution and not losing 13 billion from the 400 billion that we had been told by the National Assembly. So, Honorable Speaker, what we want to say as a committee is that we had opportunity for a robust conversation with our colleagues from the National Assembly. I have also had opportunity to meet some of them in committee. Some of them, like the Honorable DK, they call him DK. I had never interacted with him. I've come to realize that he's not a bad man, he's a good man. And we have learned a lot from each other. But one of the things we also continue to insist.
Who is DK?
Honorable DK is the Honorable David Kiplagat, Member of Parliament, MP for Soy. Yes, Honorable Speaker, let me just conclude and reiterate something that we said yesterday as well, that we must stick to the constitutional principles even when it comes to matters of public finance in this country. We want transparency, Honorable Speaker. Some of the things that were delaying even the process, we in the Senate were insisting on some transparency. For instance, we were asking if the finance bill of 2024 was supposed to raise an additional 380 billion, we need to be shown the programs for which this money had been planned, so that we see if we have lost the entire 380, which programs were there for devolution that we can remove. There was also this claim that the national government was reducing its budget or its allocation by 320 billion. We need to be shown those figures so that we are clear and nobody is playing their cards under the table. If everything is put on the table, it is very easy for us to agree. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, I want to thank the House again for giving me the opportunity to be a member of the Mediation Committee, and hope that in future we will be able to grow the path of devolution year on year. With those many remarks, I second Honorable Chair.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the Senate adopts the report of the Mediation Committee on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 38 of 2024, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 26th November 2024, and further that pursuant to Article 113, subsection 2 of the Constitution, and standing under 167(3) of the Senate, approves the mediated version of the bill. Honorable Senators, before I open the floor to the members to contribute, I want to acknowledge the visiting delegation from the County Assembly of Kisumu. Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this morning of a delegation from the County Assembly of Kisumu, comprising members of the Committee on Procedure and Rules and its Secretariat. The delegation is undertaking benchmarking visit in the Senate. I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that they may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. Number one, Honorable Gald Olima, who is the Vice Chairperson of the committee. Honorable Kennedy Ajwang, member. Ms. Annabel Wabuge, Senior Clerk Assistant. Mr. Rogers Wagude, Clerk Assistant. Mr. Fanuel Okonde, Answered Reporter. And Mr. William Oganda, Sergeant at Arms. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Yes, Senator Beatrice Ogora.
Memes. One of the famous memes on TikTok is a young man who is in a public van and he keeps on asking the driver, "Tumefika Kericho?" And I'm told that they can easily tell the people of Kisumu when they get to Kericho because of many other things, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I celebrate what the County Assembly is doing. This House, Mr. Speaker, the Senate of the Republic of Kenya, should never tire of training and capacity building all our 47 county assemblies to bring them to the stature, Mr. Speaker, and the capacity of the Senate, because that is our constitutional duty, Mr. Speaker, and we cannot pass on that responsibility to any other house, including the National Assembly. My view, Mr. Speaker, is that their perception and understanding of devolution and our devolved institutions, Mr. Speaker, is a bit skewed. And therefore, I take pride as a member of this House. Each time we have a visiting delegation from our county assemblies of various committees, leadership of those houses, Mr. Speaker, when they come here to learn, Mr. Speaker. And I know that during their time of interaction, they get to learn, not just as members, but even members of staff that accompany them. They interact from their sergeant at arms with our sergeant at arms, their members of secretariat with our members of secretariat, and members, Mr. Speaker. I wish we could do more. I'm not so much abreast with what happened in our committees, but when I used to serve in committees, Mr. Speaker, occasionally we would have members of county assemblies be allowed actually to sit with us in our committees as we transact business. The counterpart, if it is a committee on health, they'd sit with us in the Committee of Health of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, and interact and get to learn and appreciate how we transact our business. And there are times also that we'd learn for them on some of their better refined procedures than what we have here in the Senate. That is the architecture and the design of our Constitution, that these two institutions relate that way. Mr. Speaker, therefore, with that regard, I celebrate the visiting delegation from Kisumu. Mr. Speaker, I'd be very brief on this topic of the division, mediated version of the Division of Revenue. First, I want to celebrate the members of the Senate that served in this committee. They gave a very good account of ourselves as a House, Mr. Speaker. I was proud every afternoon or evening when I tuned into the TV and I watched the arguments and counter-arguments from both sides of the mediation committee, Mr. Speaker. But I particularly felt proud as a senator because of the good job that the team that we sent did. Mr. Speaker, I know we would have wished for more resources. Point, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the Constitution did us in with that particular regard. If you read Article 217 of our Constitution on division of revenue, once every 5 years, and I think this exercise we shall be undertaking next year, Mr. Speaker, a very interesting experience which I want Senator Sifuna to fully participate when the time comes, because it's one of the key eye-openers for you as a senator when you participate in this exercise. We come up with the basis upon which resources are shared among us counties. Because the Constitution understood and knew that it is the Senate of the Republic of Kenya that is the primary defender of devolution, they gave us enormous power with regards to deciding this basis. So properly guided and guarded are we on this provision that once we have passed a resolution, it is the only clause or the only report that once it leaves this House, if the National Assembly wants to overturn it, they need to raise 2/3, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, for the 3 or 4 occasions that we've had the occasion to pass the revenue formula, Mr. Speaker, National Assembly, though they disagree with us, they've never had occasion to question us because the Constitution appreciated that as a Senate, that is our forte, and it is upon us to determine. And once we have agreed on the basis upon which counties share these resources, Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly takes a nod. And if they disagree with us, then they have to raise 2/3 of the House. Something that only, they put us on the same pedestal like a constitutional requirement or like the impeachment of a president or a deputy or the overturning of a presidential memorandum, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate that. But when you move to Article 218, that is where I complain, and is the basis of my complaint. I wish that on this matter of division of revenue and the determination of resources between Senate and National Assembly, we had retained similar powers, as such that once we consider division of revenue, Mr. Speaker, because we are reasonable people, it's not that we are going to sit and say, give 800 billion to counties, yet we are aware, Mr. Speaker, of our financial position. We would have been moderate in our consideration, Mr. Speaker. I wish we had similar powers as what has been provided in Article 217, Mr. Speaker, as such that upon the determination by the Senate of how much is due to the counties, then National Assembly will need 2/3 to overturn it. But here we are. Article 218 expects that Parliament shall make the decision. Parliament means both houses. And therefore, as much as many of our colleagues, because I've followed the conversation with comments being made by some of our colleagues on our social media platforms, Mr. Speaker, that our colleagues, how could you agree to this or the other? It's not upon them alone to agree. It's a duty of Parliament. Both houses must come to a conclusion. Sometimes it's not courage to bang yourself, Mr. Speaker, against the wall. It's not an act of courage. You're actually hurting yourself. I pointed out to this House 2 weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, that I was beginning to receive SMSs from governors that know me, that wanted to ask, and the question they kept on prodding is that, Majority Leader, are you likely to conclude on division of revenue before you proceed on recess? And when you ask them why, they say, we want to do at least a supplementary budget so that we have a rough idea. Can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, many of our county assemblies are about to break for recess, and they have no basis upon which to do their supplementary budget because we haven't done CARA for them to know what is their share of the national cake, Mr. Speaker. And it would have been completely unfair of us if we would have asked Senator Sifuna, and he knows how to stick to his guns, Mr. Speaker. In fact, he loves opposing more than supporting things, Mr. Speaker. We would have asked them that go there and just insist on 400 and don't listen to anything else. But are we helping our counties, Mr. Speaker? It is our wish that perhaps if it was possible, we'd raise these figures, Mr. Speaker. But remember, the constitutional edict is that this is a determination of Parliament, not Senate alone. Both houses must agree, Mr. Speaker. And I want to appreciate that because of that provision of the Constitution, our colleagues have done well. 387.425, Mr. Speaker, together with 8 billion from equalization fund, Mr. Speaker. Yet we are still actually going to do further, I think, before we break on recess, the conditional allocation, Mr. Speaker. We shall still achieve on or about the intention that we set out when we began this year's division of revenue bill. Mr. Speaker, you know, I take great comfort in the fact that I know that as a House, we put our best case forward, but we are also intelligent enough to listen to what our colleagues from the National Assembly are telling us and the realities that we have to live with. The truth of the matter, Mr. Speaker, is that our economy isn't doing so well. We are under a debt distress situation where 70% of the resources that we are collecting, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, do not leave Harambee Avenue. They are collected by KRA, and CBK pays them out in debt either to foreign institutions or even local institutions that we owe these resources, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we must learn to make live, Mr. Speaker, with the little that we have. I am particularly, Mr. Speaker, impressed because when the President gave the State of the Nation address last week on Thursday, he gave another assurance. And I don't know why Senator Sifuna is saying the President sometimes draws the wrong advice from this House. He needs to read the BPS report of the Budget and Finance Committee of this financial year. One of the things that we had challenged the executive to do is that apart from just raising taxes, is that they need actually to digitize revenue collections at KRA so that they realize more revenue. Because there's still, I am certain, Mr. Speaker, that if we were to seal revenue leakages that exist in this country, perhaps we'll raise far more than what we are trying to raise with this year's financial bill. That was a finding of this Senate, Mr. Speaker, and I am impressed that the President gave a commitment to both houses of Parliament when he addressed us last week, that they are in the final stages of digitizing our revenue collection mechanism and to reduce on wastage, Mr. Speaker, so that we have more money to share with our counties and development can be realized, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I want to celebrate and appreciate the good work that our committee has done. I see they are proposing for us 387.425. Let us make this decision so that as we walk to our villages over the Christmas holidays, Mr. Speaker, we can look at our governors straight in the face and ask them to give a good account of the resources that we have devolved to the devolved units, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, as it is today, you're actually shy on taking on the county government's officials and the governor, because they'd quickly come and speak soon after you and say, but you guys, you know, you have not even told us the basis of how much we are likely to receive this financial year. After the passage of this bill, and I want to request, Mr. Speaker, if possible, if our colleagues can speak to this mediated version of the bill today, so that we conclude on it, Mr. Speaker, and we quickly embark on CARA, so that by next week, Mr. Speaker, we can be done with this business, Mr. Speaker. We can retreat actually to the villages, you know, with our chest held high, knowing that now we have done our duty, our national duty, Mr. Speaker, and citizens can expect services from us. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I celebrate their industry. I don't want to speak long on many of the things that we addressed. Remember, this is a mediated version. Mr. Speaker, we had said what we need to say about what we expect of our county governments. I would therefore wish to end my contribution at that particular point, Mr. Speaker, and celebrate the colleagues that took time. I urge colleagues that let us quickly dispense off with this matter, appreciate the work that our colleagues are put in, and move on to other things. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Asante sana mstahiki Spika kwa kunipa nafasi. Kwanza ningetaka kushukuru kamati iliyokaa chini na kuhakikisha kwamba wamefanikisha maelewano kati ya fedha ambazo zinaenda katika kaunti. Mstahiki Spika, nianze kusema ya kwamba kazi inayofanywa na maseneta ni muhimu. Shinda ambazo wanapitia kuhakikisha kwamba pesa ambazo zinaenda gatuzi zetu zimefika ni kazi ngumu. Ni kazi msaragambo, ni kazi ambayo inahitaji maseneta kumakinika na kutetea gatuzi zetu. Lakini cha ajabu ni kwamba hizi fedha zinapofika katika kaunti zetu, mangavana wengi wanajifanya kama ni miungu, kwamba hawezi ulizwa maswali. Kama seneti tumekuwa sisi ni tingatinga, kazi yetu ni kuchukuliwa kumbomoa milima. Tunapomaliza kutengeneza barabara na fedha kufika katika gatuzi zetu, inasemekana kwamba utaharibu barabara, lazima tuwekelewe kwa lori. Mstahiki Spika, ile pesa tumeng'ang'ana leo na kuhakikisha kwamba imepita. Ningeuliza ya kwamba wale mangavana ambao wanatumia hizi pesa wazitumie kwa njia ya haki, kuhakikisha kwamba kuna maendeleo mashinani. Mstahiki Spika, na nitasema niambie kwamba Mswahili usema ukitaka kujua chochoro kura nauri. Sisi kama seneti tumemakinika na tuhakikisha kwamba kuanzia mwaka ujao pia tutaendelea kuhakikisha kwamba tunafuatilia fedha zetu zinaenda wapi. Ukiangalia katika mahospitali zetu, katika gatuzi zetu, utapata kwamba watu wetu bado wanahangaika kwa sababu ya ukosefu wa madawa na ukosefu wa huduma muhimu ambazo zinafaa kwenda kwa zile hospitali. Utasikia gavana akisema kwamba nang'ang'ana na barabara. Unajua, yes. Asante sana Mstahiki Spika. Mstahiki Spika, mimi kama mwenyekiti wa kamati ya ukulima, uvuvi na uchumi samawati, ni vizuri niseme ya kwamba miradi mingi ambayo inafanyika katika gatuzi zetu, ni kama gavana wengi wamesahau kwamba kuna ukulima, kuna uvuvi katika nyanja ya uchumi samawati. Shinda iliyoko pale ni kwamba ukiangalia katika bajeti ambazo zinatengenezwa, bajeti ambazo zinapelekwa katika mbunge zetu za county, ni kwamba uwezi pata hata moja ambayo inawekwa pesa ya kutosha kwenda katika uchumi samawati. Tumetembea sehemu mbalimbali ambao uvuvi unafanyika, na cha kushangaza ni kwamba wavuvi bado wanahangaika na bado kuna fedha ambazo zinafaa kwenda katika kusaidia wale wavuvi. Mstahiki Spika, mkulima ni mtu wa maana, na nitarejea kusema kwamba kama kuna mtu anahitajika katika maisha ya kila siku, moja ni mkulima. Tunahitaji mkulima asubuhi wakati tunatafuta staftai, chakula ya mchana na hata jioni, mara 4 kwa siku. Lakini wakulima wengi nchini tutapata kwamba wameachiliwa, na tunajua ya kwamba kilimo imegatuliwa. Mstahiki Spika, kwa miaka yangu ya awali hapo nimekuwa mwakilishi wandi katika gatuzi la Kirinyaga, na nikakuwa kiongozi wa wengi katika mbunge la Kirinyaga. Gavana wangu ni yule gavana aliyopo leo, na tangu leo utapata ya kwamba zile fedha ambazo zimewekwa hususan kwenda katika wandi, kwa sababu wandi ndio kisehemu kidogo sana cha ugatuzi, kwamba unapata kwamba wambunge katika Kirinyaga bado wanang'ang'ania miradi ambao wamepeana kupitia kwa mangavana kuweza kutekelezwa. Unapata kwamba wanapoongea wanakuwa ni maadui wa gavana. ile njia kuhakikisha kwamba fedha ambazo zimewafikia mangavana imefika katika kona zote la gatuzi yoyote katika Kenya, katika magatuzi yote 47, Mr. Speaker, ni kuhakikisha kwamba miradi ambayo imepeanwa na mawakilishi wandi wote inatekelezwa katika zile wandi ambao wanasimamia. Na hiyo si lazima ifanyike kwamba, kwa sababu uongozi si mapenzi. Sio lazima gavana awe kwamba anasikizana na mwakilishi wandi. Sio lazima gavana awe anasikilizana na seneta, kwa sababu katika siasa hata kama mpendani lazima huduma ifikie mwananchi. Kwa sababu kukosana katika kazi si neno, kwa sababu mwishowe tunafaa kufanya kazi, sio harusi. Mstahiki Speaker, jana katika kamati ya CIPIC, najua kwamba CIPIC ilikuwa na kikao ambao iliita gavana wangu wa kutoka gatuzi la Kirinyaga. Jambo ambalo lilikuwa inaulizwa ni maswali kuhusu iliyokuwa Kiriwasco ambayo ilikuwa inahusika na maji. Mpaka saa hii fedha ambayo inakusanywa na Kiriwasco haijapita vilivyo katika bunge la county ili uweze kugawiwa majukumu kulingana na sheria ambayo zinahusiana na ununuzi wa bidhaa. Unapata ya kwamba bado kuna mashimo mengi ambao pesa zinaokotwa katika county zinapotelea. Na kwa hivyo mangavana wafai kila siku ni kulialia kila siku ati pesa haitoshi, haifiki. Pia tunataka kuona ile pesa wanaokota inaokotwa kwa njia inayofaa na kuwa una uaminifu na inafikia malengo ambayo inafaa kufikia. Nikimalizia, Mstahiki Speaker, ni kwamba saa hii, Mstahiki Speaker, ukienda eneo la Mwea ambao ni eneo kubwa sana ambao inakuzwa mpunga katika eneo la Kirinyaga, ni kwamba wakulima wengi wanahangaika kwa sababu ingawa kwamba wamezalisha, ingawa kwamba kutakuwa na mbolea ya ruzuku, ingawa kwamba kumekuwa na pembejeo ambazo zimefikishwa na kufanya wakulima ongeze mazao, bado kuna tatizo kubwa sana kwa miundo msingi ya kutoa mazao yao kutoka mashambani kufikisha kwa magara. Mstahiki Speaker, hata tukizalisha na bado tunapata kwamba wakulima wanapoteza mazao mengi sana kuozea shambani. Gharama ya kutoa gunia moja mpunga kutoka mashambani kupeleka katika magara ya NCPB na katika magara ya vyama vya ushirika katika eneo la Mwea, utapata ya kwamba kuna shinda kubwa ina wagharimu wakulima 1200 katika kila gunia. Mstahiki Speaker, kama mkulima atapoteza 1200 kwa sababu ya miundo msingi ambayo ingetengenezwa na gatuzi la Kirinyaga, ni kusema kwamba ile faida yote ilikuwa inapatikana kwa sababu ya kupata mbolea ruzuku na pembejeo za bei ya rais zinapotea. Na kwa hivyo ndo ningemwambia gavana wangu kwamba mugala muue na haki yake mpe. Tuhakikisha kwamba huduma za barabara, miundo msingi imeboreshwa ili wakulima waweze kufaidika. Mstahiki Speaker, si hayo tu ambayo nilikuwa nataka kusema siku ya leo. Najua ya kwamba kamati nyingi zimekuwa na matatizo kubwa wakati tunawaita mangavana hapa kuja kujibu maswali. Na unajua Mswahili usema mrina haogopi nyuki. Kama unataka asali lazima utafuata mzinga na kuenda kuzoa asali, uwe unaumwa na nyuki ama uumwi na nyuki. Unapoomba kiti ya gavana lazima uwe tayari kukaa chini na wale ambao wanaangalia kama kazi inafanyika katika gatuzi. Lazima uwe tayari kukaa chini na kujibu maswali kwa wale wakilishi wandi ambao wamechaguliwa. Lazima kuwe na heshima kuhakikisha kwamba kila jambo ambalo unafanya unawajibika. Na nitakuwa nikalili wa akili kama sitasema ya kwamba kumekuwa na madharau si hamba kutoka kwa magavana, kwa wakilishi wandi na maseneta ambao waliochaguliwa. Na ni vizuri tuseme ya kwamba itafika siku ambao tunafaa kuwa na kikao. Kazi yetu sio kubeba mzigo mkubwa, na wakati tunauliza maswali wanatuambia mzigo uko kichwani, kwa pani jasho la tutokeani. Lazima wajibike kwa kujibu maswali na kufanya kazi ambayo wamepewa kufanya, na wasiwe tu kazi yao ni kutupatia kazi ya kutafutia pesa lakini wataki kujibu maswali. Asante sana Mstahiki Speaker.
Honorable Speaker, I thank you once more for giving me the opportunity to contribute to the report of the Mediation Committee on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill 2024. Honorable Speaker, just yesterday when the President visited Kisumu, and when the CS Treasury was called to make a speech, I remember the CS made a very outstanding statement on devolution. And the statement was, he was reflecting on a commitment that the president and himself shared on the support to county governments. And Honorable Speaker, I expected that we would maintain the 400 billion that we initially agreed on to be given to the counties. And to me, that would have been an outright support to devolution and outright support to county governments. By accepting to reduce to 387 or less, Honorable Speaker, I do not think this is the commitment that the head of state was making with the CS Treasury on the support of county governments. However, Honorable Speaker, I empathize and I feel with the reasons that the committee gave as they were moving this and as the seconded this mediated report. But also to say from the onset, Honorable Speaker, that negotiations may not be a preserve of PhD holders, as was stated by Senator Sifuna when he was seconding this, Honorable Speaker. Negotiations are just deliberations which lead to a give and take, but I still feel, Honorable Speaker, that it would not be fair to the county governments that we go by the report and the figures that have been given here. Honorable Speaker, the counties as they are have no other avenue of developing their areas other than the on-source revenue that they get and the equitable share as is given, Honorable Speaker. We know that the PPs have not been working for the county governments. The national governments have policies that puts them in a good state for the national government to negotiate with development partners, which most of the county governments do not benefit from. County governments from the onset have tried so much to engage development partners through their investment conferences, Honorable Speaker, but because of the policies that we have, they have not achieved much. Honorable Speaker, we all know that even functions as they were being unbundled to the county governments, these functions were never costed. Arbitrary figures have been put on these functions. For example, if you take health, Honorable Speaker, the function of health is so expansive, and yet it was devolved to the counties without a scientific costing that was done to the services that are offered in health. And so the counties continue to suffer with the amounts that they have. And Honorable Speaker, it is also common sense that where you have a bigger brother like the national government, as we have in the dispensation that we are in, that we have two levels of government, and it was well stated that it is the duty of national government to capacity build the county governments to come to the par on the expectations of the public. I felt, and I continue to feel, Honorable Speaker, that the shortfall that we have should have been borne by the national government, and we should have maintained our original figure of 400 billion, Honorable Speaker.
On the senators, can you kindly maintain?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for saving me and for ensuring that the Senator of Nandi is seated and quiet, listening to my presentation. Anyway, Honorable Speaker, as I said, I feel, Honorable Speaker, that we should have maintained the 400 billion. I do not see a reason why this shortfall should not have been borne by the national government. Because, Honorable Speaker, if we have to go by less figures, what then happens to the priority projects that the counties are supposed to undertake. And some of them were quantified. The county aggregations that require 50-50 matching with the national government, that was placed at 11 billion, Honorable Speaker. We have the enhanced contribution by NSSF that has 3 billion. We have the community health promoters, Honorable Speaker, that is so key to the achievement of universal health care. That also has a 50-50 matching with the national government. On our side being 3.2 billion. We have in health too, we have the doctors' collective bargaining agreement, which comes to around 5.8 billion. Honorable Speaker, you know that the functions that were given to the county governments are core to the heart of our people. Not limited to health, but we have water, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in my county, now there are rains. We have water. Despite the fact that we can see the lake just by us, our people are not able to have access to water, especially during drought. In my county, Honorable Speaker, and even in my sub-county, which is Ndewa, our people suffer so much for lack of access to water. The issue of water is a problem. Even though certain investments have been made on the drilling of boreholes and the provision of the water points, but reticulation to the people remains a challenge in my county. And I believe in other counties, Honorable Speaker. If you go to our municipalities, you often hear that there's no water in my headquarters and in other headquarters. And this is a function that the county governments are supposed to do. The municipalities, Honorable Speaker, have old infrastructure that was laid years ago. And this infrastructure breaks down often. The counties are not able then to work towards the universal expected standards of having our people access water. Honorable Speaker, another key sector that was devolved to counties is agriculture. Honorable Speaker, in agriculture, we have fisheries for some of us coming from the lake, which is very important to us. And we have agriculture itself, the farming part of it. Honorable Speaker, our farmers do not even access extension officers. Our farmers are not able to access these officers when they need it, Honorable Speaker, from these departments. And Honorable Speaker, I believe this is because of the inadequate funding that is given to these sectors. Honorable Speaker, I expect a situation where if a farm be able to access, our farmers still keep cattle, our farmers still keep dairy cattle, and they often require services from the veterinary department. But without adequate funding, Honorable Speaker, our people turn to pets. Honorable Speaker, in my country still and in other countries, we are looking to achieving a percentage of tree coverage. In my country, there were 2 outstanding forests, one called Kodera Forest, another called Ruma that is next to my village. Honorable Speaker, the deforestation that has taken place in this forest is so massive, and I was looking forward to some adequate funding so that my county government would embark on a forestation program to bring my country to the expected tree cover national. Honorable Speaker, I am not very comfortable with the reduced figures, and I feel as a Senate, we should have maintained our figures. And so, Honorable Speaker, as I step aside, I want it to be categorical that I do not support this version of the mediated report. The Senate must continuously stand with the county governments. The Senate must continuously stand with the figures that were given initially in the report here. And Honorable Speaker, it is also worth noticing that as this report is moved, we do not have now the aggression that the committee have when they initially presented their report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to contribute this. I'll be short, I'll be very brief, Mr. Speaker, because at 11:30 I'll be taking the oath of office as a commissioner. I'm quite amused about that. I'm quite happy. Mr. Speaker, sir, I sat in the mediation committee, and indeed, we as the senators were quite firm that the amount that we had suggested of 400 plus would remain untouched. We pushed, Mr. Speaker, we listened to our counterparts, and I want to agree with the colleague Senator Beatrice that indeed we had insisted we need and we must be the 400. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, at times it takes a bit of courage to be able to give in, and especially aware of the situation that the country is in. We realized that there are no people who are served by the national or the county government, and we did realize that the situation and the physical space that the country is moving around. Then in the spirit of give and take, we said, Mr. Speaker, we must, to ensure that the counties do not come to a halt, we must come to an agreement. Mr. Speaker, sir, in every mediation, it is the spirit of give and take that governs people. The emotional intelligence that's required for us to be able to come to a conclusion, because looking at the fact that we will be shortly moving for recess, and the county government will also be doing this, the same, we asked ourselves very hard questions. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we said, yes, promoting devolution, upholding devolution, ensure figure, Mr. Speaker, sir, with heavy heart that we agreed to the relatively reduced figure of 387.4. Mr. Speaker, sir, having said that, it is also very, very important that we also tell our colleagues, the governors, that yes, austerity measures as being practiced by the national government. The fact that the national government had reduced its budget by over 380-something billions. And I like what Senator Sifuna said, that we needed to see the breakdown of these figures. But as we look down at those figures, as we interrogate those figures, Mr. Speaker, let our counties not come to a halt. And I remember the majority leader has just said he received several calls. I did also receive such a call from my governor telling us, yes, our county is in dire need and something must be done. Mr. Speaker, sir, we made that decision to bridge the gap so that we do not cripple the activities of the county government. This, Mr. Speaker, sir, as we sat with the members of the National Assembly, as we try to push and harden on our position, that we as the promoters and protectors of devolution, that we are not going to take any cut. It was not lost to us that even we here in the Senate, our committees, the other drivers of the Senate business have also had to face a budget cut, because that is the reality and the situation as it is. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, as I urge my colleagues to support the mediated fashion, I would want to tell them, yes, it is with heavy hearts that we in the mediation committee did accept this position, but we know moving forward, Mr. Speaker, and we agreed, we need to unbundle all the functions and make sure that we inject the budget that goes with it. It is in this spirit, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the spirit of give and take, in the spirit of knowing that we are one nation, serving one people, that we must be prepared at times to take compromising positions where we accommodate our people, because service delivery to any part of Kenya, to any Kenyan, regardless of their being served by the national or the county government, is success for Kenyans. And this, Mr. Speaker, sir, is what informed our accepting this mediated fashion. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as I sit down, I want to urge my forward services and deliver that they require. Mr. Speaker, sir, yes, I agree with my colleague that the county government do not have the frameworks that the national government do enjoy of having to, or entering into PPPs. But this, Mr. Speaker, sir, we must also have a paradigm shift in the way we look at things. Some of our counties, Mr. Speaker, especially in the agricultural sector, in water reticulation, the unit is small that it cannot achieve economies of scale, and therefore municipal county government, so that they can be able to realize some of the mega projects that have been conceptualized. Mr. Speaker, as I say this, I remember the mega dams that were promised in Nyeri County. For the last 60 years, we've been waiting. But the kind of budgetary allocation that they require, the county government will never, in its resources, be able to realize that. And that opens the door for us to negotiate with the national government, with the neighboring counties, so that as we enter into we can be able to achieve economies of scale by making sure that we have numbers that are enough. Mr. Speaker, my colleague also alluded to the fact that water reticulation is a major non-resource water. That is water that is lost through pipe bustage or water that's siphoned out. We lose, at some counties, lose up to 70%. Services closer to the people. This can only be done through collaboration of the national government and the county governments and formation of regional blocks, so that economies of scale and the numbers can be able to attract investors who can come and invest in these counties. As I sit down, Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the Mediation Committee, both the senators and the members of the National Assembly, for their being selfless in their spirit of giving and taking to ensure that we come up with this mediated fashion, which I urge my colleagues to adopt moving forward. Is we know that source revenue in the county government, and ensuring that we seal the leakages, we seal the loopholes, and most importantly, improve governance and accountability and transparency, so that the services are delivered promptly to our people. Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Senator Karungu Thangwa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So that from the onset I can say that I don't agree with this report. Because, Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, this House approved 400 billion to go to the counties. I don't know whether I'm audible, Mr. Speaker. Or maybe I can move closer to you.
We can, Thangwa, it's okay, but you are very audible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity, and the opportunity to say that I do not support this mediation report, because, Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, this House approved 400 billion to go to the counties, but the National Assembly, which is never mandated to take care of the interest of the counties, reduced that amount by 20 billion. Mr. Speaker, the committee sat, the mediation committee, and they all agreed on 387 billion. That is cutting short 13 billion to the counties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to give my reasons, borrowing heavily from the presidential State of the Nation speech at the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, the President said on paragraph 18, Mr. Speaker, if I can read for you, the President said tax revenues have grown by 11.5% in the year to June 2024, reflecting the success of our tax-based expansion measures. The economy continues to grow steadily, recording a 5.6% growth rate in 2023, among the highest globally. We project 5% growth this year and 5.6% in 2025. Mr. Speaker, if the tax revenues have grown by 11.5%, why cut the amount of money that is supposed to go to the counties by 13 billion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you read the report by this good committee, the Mediation Committee Consideration of the Division of Revenue, they said that the withdrawal of the Finance Bill 2024 was an unprecedented event and has implications on government finances. This occasioned a shortfall in projected revenue collection of 346 billion. Mr. Speaker, the President is saying one thing, that there is tax revenue growth by 11.5%, yet the Mediation Committee is saying there was a shortfall, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sometimes when you're accused of telling lies, it gives us, a hard time knowing who to believe and what to accept, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that shortfall the committee is implying happened has been negated by the President himself. So my question is, why do we reduce the amount that goes to the counties, Mr. Speaker? And very well, Mr. Speaker, Article 96 of the Constitution is for us to take care of the interest of our counties, both the government and the people. So, Mr. Speaker, I do not understand why the Mediation Committee or why the senators whom we sent to that committee could agree to any reduction. Actually, we could have asked for more, Mr. Speaker. Because why, Mr. Speaker? Paragraph 29 of the President's speech, Mr. Speaker. It says, counties have struggled with shortages of medicine, equipment and staff, hindering service delivery and leaving countless Kenyans with suboptimal access to health care. The President himself, Mr. Speaker, is aware that the counties are struggling from his speech in Parliament. Yet the committee, either they are not in line with what the President is trying to achieve, or they're coming up with their own figures, Mr. Speaker. The President goes on by saying, Mr. Speaker, on that paragraph 29, it would have been easy for me to step back and leave this responsibility to counties alone. But that would have been a disservice to Kenyans and a betrayal of our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the President is aware that there is shortage and he cannot sit back and leave the responsibility to the counties alone. Mr. Speaker, then why would a committee of this House reduce the budget or the money that goes to the counties, yet it has been made aware that there is struggles, there's shortages, there's all that by the President himself in the counties, Mr. Speaker. So that's why I would not at any moment support this...
Senator Mundingi, what's your point of order?
Misha rafiki wangu Senator wa Kiambu, Mr. Karungu Adhangwa, mambo ya kutanja rais wa Kenya, shinda ya mediation haikuwa na rais wa Kenya. Mediation ilikuwa na maseneta wale tulichagua hapa, na wale wa mediation wengine walikuwa pale ni watu wa mbunge ambaye wataki kusikia kaunti zetu njia ukatusi wakipata era inafaa. Kwa hivyo ningetaka kukosoa rafiki wangu Karungu Adhangwa, hakuna pahali rais alihusisha kwa sababu amepeana demokrasia. Mwende mkae chini ndio devolution iweze kupata kazi, iweze kupata era ile inafaa bilioni 400. Kwa hivyo ningependa kumwambia angekosoa ile kamati yetu na parliament ambaye haitaki devolution iendelee kazi. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, maybe it is my English that the senator is not understanding what I'm trying to say, but I can simplify for him to understand. What I'm trying to say, Mr. Speaker, is that the President is aware and he knows the counties are struggling. The President wants to help the counties. But the committee that has been mandated, Mr. Speaker, I wish you would protect me. I wish you would protect me, Mr. Speaker.
Bwana Mazayo, nini hoja yako nidhamu?
Bwana Spika, pengine ndugu yangu aliye hivi sasa anatoa maoni yake kwenye ile ripoti yetu ya Mediation Committee, amesema ya kwamba pengine ni kizungu chake, kimombo chake ni kwamba pengine yule ndugu yetu hakielewi. Nataka kumuuliza, je, ni haki kusema kitendo in a form of innuendo, jambo ambalo innuendo ni kwamba pengine hulisemi kiwazi? Nataka kujua, je, akisema hivyo Mundigi mwenyewe hujiita daktari hapa, yeye akiwa kama daktari anajua kimombo sana, na hata nishamsikia mimi akiongea kimombo. Je, ni haki kwa ndugu yangu ambaye hivi sasa chairman wangu wa barabara anaweza kusema kwamba Mundigi ana upungufu wa kujua kizungu ama kimombo? Asante Bwana Spika.
Senator Thangwa, unaweza kurekebisha matamshi yako. Ulikuwa unamaanisha Senator Mundigi hafahamu lugha ya kizungu.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't mean to say that he does not understand English. Maybe I was speaking too fast for him to comprehend. And that's why I decided to slow down and explain to him or to the House that the President is aware that the counties are struggling, Mr. Speaker. And because they are struggling, you would expect a House that is mandated to come up with this law, the DORA Act, Mr. Speaker, the committee that understands that we need to have service delivery at the counties, instead of reducing these amounts, we should actually increase this amount, Mr. Speaker. I was also trying to say that the President has acknowledged that the tax base has increased by 11.5%. So there is more money within the national government. So then why reduce the monies that goes to the counties? That is my question, and that's why I was trying to compare the two, what the President believes and what this House believes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know these monies, when they get to the counties, there's a lot of embezzlement, there's a lot of corruption, and as we send monies to the counties, we should also call upon the governors to use these resources the way it's supposed to be used, Mr. Speaker, to fight corruption and to stop differing or eating county monies, Mr. Speaker. And the other day I saw the governor says that they are going to shut down counties if we do not agree. And you know, Mr. Speaker, you do not threaten a person who is out there trying to assist the counties to get what they're supposed to get. So when you say, if you do not agree very fast, we are going to shut down counties, are you trying to tell us? And I think that's why these members of this committee agreed to reduce to the reduction of the 13 billion, Mr. Speaker, because now the county governors, they are threatening they are going to shut down, and probably this committee decided, okay, instead of you shutting down, let me give you less money, Mr. Speaker. I would want the governors, with the same gusto that they were going to, the threats are going to shut down the counties, Mr. Speaker, they should come out and say how they are using and misusing the county resources, Mr. Speaker. Because monies have been sent to the counties, and when they have been sent to the counties, Mr. Speaker, you realize that the health workers are not paid. For example, the county of Kiambu, my great county, Mr. Speaker, the health workers have not been paid their salaries for the last 4 months, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Kiambu employees are not attending the Kikoska Games this year, something they have done every year. And you know that's the only opportunity you meet other people from other counties for cohesion and agreement and understanding of each other, Mr. Speaker. And they are not going to attend because, one, they say there is no money. But if you ask them, the money that you have had, how did you use that money? Didn't you budget for this? And it was budgeted for, Mr. Speaker. So you should not again blame the national government that there is late disbursement, yet you have your own source of revenue, Mr. Speaker. And this is a call to all governors, Mr. Speaker, that they should work on their own source of revenue. And working on own source of revenue does not mean increasing the taxes or the levies, Mr. Speaker. It is just broadening the collection of it. And this can only be done through digitization, Mr. Speaker. And I'm comparing the President's speech from my contribution, Mr. Speaker. Because if you read paragraph 66 of the President, actually I'm supporting some of his pronouncement, Mr. Speaker. The President said that I am delighted to report on the dramatic improvements we have recorded by automating and digitizing our revenue collection and service delivery through e-citizen, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this should be trickled down to the county governments, and I'm calling on the governors to borrow from the President's speech and digitize their own source revenue collection methods, Mr. Speaker. They should digitize tax collection or levies collection, digitize service delivery, digitize water supply, Mr. Speaker. And you know, counties own water companies in their counties, Mr. Speaker. And since I'm in one of committees that scrutinize these reports, the audit reports about water companies, Mr. Speaker, we have realized counties are losing a lot of water through the non-revenue water, Mr. Speaker, through leakages, stealing of water, no meters, and all that, Mr. Speaker. And if you look at it, like yesterday, we had the governor of Kirinyaga, and his county is losing 56% of all the water supplied to the county government to the county of Kirinyaga, Mr. Speaker. 56%. And when you ask them, they say the pipes are old, we don't have meters, the people are stealing water. Mr. Speaker, if we digitize, even have smart meters, Mr. Speaker, this can really help the service delivery if we digitize, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know counties need money, and it is upon this House to scrutinize how the governors are using these monies, Mr. Speaker. The other day, and we saw it yesterday in the news, that the national government, through the Ministry of Water, they are forming a task force to fight rats menace, snail menace, and birds menace in Mwea, Mr. Speaker. Though it might sound funny, this is a huge problem in Mwea, Mr. Speaker. The people of Mwea are suffering because their rice is being eaten by the birds, called quelea birds, the snails, and of course the rats, Mr. Speaker. But when you ask them, and I've talked to the senator of Kirinyaga, and he has given me more information by telling me that one red-billed quelea bird can eat 80 grams of rice every day. If you multiply that by a year, Mr. Speaker, that's about 215 tons of rice. So the Mwea people, if you convert that to money, they lose 32 million Kenya shillings every year, Mr. Speaker. But when you ask the national government or the county government, they are forming a task force. You know, this government of ours, Mr. Speaker, they like meetings. They even form a meeting to discuss whether they should have a meeting, Mr. Speaker. What I'm trying to say is, Mr. Speaker, how to fight this menace in Mwea is to give counties more resources. But again, I've been told here by the Senator of Kirinyaga that the county government of Kirinyaga has never budgeted for this menace, has never put money to try to reduce these red-billed quelea birds that are eating the rice, Mr. Speaker. And when you do a little bit of research, how do you repel or keep away these birds, Mr. Speaker? Is by using some ultrasonic repellers, Mr. Speaker. It is a small gadget that makes some sound or emits some sound waves that the human cannot hear, but the birds will hear, and it will disturb them, and they will run away. And such a gadget, Mr. Speaker, is going for 3,000 Kenya shillings. And the county government cannot see it fit to budget for such a gadget, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have known even from our high school, of our primary school times, that we have scarecrows, Mr. Speaker. And I know maybe these birds and these rats, they are used to the scarecrow. But in this time of technology, the county government should at least even give them drones, Mr. Speaker. The drones that are also emitting the predator's sounds, so that the birds can feel like a predator is on the way, Mr. Speaker. So what I'm trying to say, Mr. Speaker, is that we shouldn't reduce the amount of money that goes to the counties, and again now ask the governors to prudently use those resources as per the budget estimates, as per the budgeting processes, and also as per the people's priorities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know I'm talking about Mwea, but probably this is not the only problem in Mwea or the rice fields, Mr. Speaker. Maybe in Bura, Ahero, North Kano, or even Lower Kuja in Migori, Mr. Speaker, maybe they're also having these problems. And when the government says it's going to form a task force to catch a rat, Mr. Speaker, you ask yourself, don't we have the people who are mandated to deal with these issues instantly? Must you form a task force to go and discuss the rats, or the birds, or the snails, or even how to kill them, Mr. Speaker, yet they already know how? All I'm trying to say is that money should be used well to the intended purposes, and I oppose this report, Mr. Speaker. We need to give counties more money so that we can be able, as a Senate, use our channels and committees to check on how these monies are used at the counties, Mr. Speaker. So I oppose this report. Thank you.
Senator Stuart Mazayo.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, cha kwanza nataka kutoa kongole kwa wale maseneta wetu, hususan katika bunge la Senate, kwa sababu haya yalikuwa ni majadiliano kulingana na vile ambavyo tulikuwa hatujaelewana na ugavi huu wa pesa zinazokwenda katika serikali zetu za mashinani. Bwana Spika, tunaona kwamba wale majabali wetu ambao walikuwa katika hii kamati, ukiniruhusu Bwana Spika, kwa heshima naweza kusema ya kwamba wakiongozwa na kiongozi Ali Roba, kufuatiwa na Edwin Sifuna na Recha Julius Burkor na Mohamed Faki na Veronica Maina na Richard Onyonka na ndugu yangu wa Matinga commissioner, vile vile Profesa Ujambo Mungatana na Edi Kishero. Hii ripoti Bwana Spika, na hawa majabali ambao tuliwapeleka ili waweze kujadiliana kuona ya kwamba wamepitisha zile pesa, walifanya bidii walivyoweza. Kulingana na matokeo yale ya kwanza, ripoti yetu sisi tulikuwa tumesema tuweze kupeleka mashinani, serikali zetu za mashinani, kupeleka bilioni 400 zote 47 waweze kugawanya, na tuone ya kwamba kila kaunti katika Kenya imefaidika na hizi pesa. Lakini kwa sababu ya sintofahamu tofauti katika bunge la kitaifa, wakaona ya kwamba hii pesa irudishwe chini. Lakini hawa majabali wetu ambao tulikuwa tumewachagua hapa waliweza kufanya bidii na hatimaye wakaweza kufikisha kiwango cha bilioni 387, ambapo si kiwango kibaya kulinganishana na vile tunavyoelewa ya kwamba 15% ya sheria inaruhusu. Bwana Spika, nataka kusema ya kwamba kipengele cha katiba cha 96 kinasema ya kwamba kazi ya Senate itakuwa kulinda na kutetea hususan zile pesa ama kitita cha pesa kile kinapelekwa katika serikali zetu za mashinani. Hii ni kazi muhimu sana kwa hili bunge letu la Senate, kuona ya kwamba hakuna mwaka tutaweza kuketi bila kupeleka hizi pesa katika serikali zetu mashinani. Lakini tumeona ya kwamba japokuwa zimepungua, huo ndio wajibu ambao sasa tunataka akili za magavana ziweze kukaa chini na kujua hii pesa ambayo imepunguzwa tutaweza kuifanya namna gani ili iweze pia yale mapato tuliyopata kuweza kuendeleza maendeleo katika serikali zetu za mashinani. Bwana Spika, hakuna mtu ambaye anaweza kufaulu kutengeza maendeleo ikiwa hatapata pesa. Na ndio sababu tunasema kwamba kipengele cha 96 ni kipengele muhimu ndani ya hili bunge la Senate. Na mimi nataka kupatia kongole masenators wote kwa kuweza kufanya bidii kuona ya kwamba bilioni 387 zimeweza kupatikana, zimekwenda katika serikali zetu za mashinani ili kuweza kusaidia maendeleo. Kongole ndugu zangu maseneta katika hili bunge. Vile vile nikiwa ninaendelea kukubaliana na hii ripoti ambayo imetengenezwa kwa hali ya taaluma ya juu. Bwana Spika, tunataka kuona hizi pesa zikienda kwa magavana, wao wasijichukulie kama wao ndio tunasema namna gani? Tunasema wao wasijichukulie kama wao ni wakubwa. Wao ni watumishi wa wale waliowapigia kura. Kwa hiyo tunataka utumishi sasa uonekane ama ubainike wazi ya kwamba hizi pesa ambazo tumezipeleka katika serikali zetu za mashinani zinatumika kwa hali inayofaa. Tunajua kuna ufijaji wa pesa kwa njia tofauti tofauti, lakini tunawasihi ya kwamba hizi pesa zikitumika vyema, wale watu wetu wa mashinani, wananchi wa mashinani wataweza kufaidika na hizi pesa. Na huo ndio muhimu ya kwa sababu tunapeleka hizi pesa katika serikali zetu za mashinani. Bwana Spika, ni lazima tuone ya kwamba magavana na wale maspika wanaohusika kusambaza hizi pesa wameweza kuzitumia kwa njia ya nidhamu. Matumizi katika hospitali. Tunasema hospitali ni kiwango cha kwanza, manake katika kaunti hakuna kaunti itakuwa na mwelekeo mwema ikiwa watu wake wengi watakuwa ni wagonjwa. Tunataka watu wa Kenya wanaoishi ndani ya Kenya afya zao ziwe sawa sawa. Na jukumu hili sasa limepelekwa katika serikali za mashinani, kuona ya kwamba wale watu wanaowaongoza katika serikali za mashinani wako na afya njema. Na ndio tunasema sababu kubwa ni kwamba ni lazima kitengo kikubwa sana cha hizi pesa zinazokwenda katika serikali zote mashinani ziende katika mahospitali, ili ziweze kuchukua madawa, ziweze kuchukua vifaa ambavyo vinaweza, kama mtu amepata ajali, kama mtu anataka kulazwa katika vile vyumba ambavyo zinaitwa intensive care, chumba cha mahututi ambacho mtu anaweza kupata madawa na hatimaye akatoka katika ile hali yake ya mahututi akaja akawa mzima tena akarudi kwa jamii yake akiwa na afya njema. Tunasema hiyo ndio sababu tunasisitiza sana kwamba pesa nyingi ziweze kupelekwa katika mahospitali, ili Wakenya wakiwa watakuwa na afya nzuri, nchi yetu itaweza kupata maendeleo zaidi. Bwana Spika, kuna pia vile vile tunasema hali za mawasiliano. Pesa hizi si za kutumia vile mtu anataka kutumia, lakini tuone hali za mawasiliano, barabara zile za mawasiliano, barabara zinazokwenda katika vijiji vyetu vya vitongoji. Tunasema ya kwamba hivyo pia hizi pesa ambazo tumezipeleka hivi sasa ziko katika mikono ya magavana, waweze kuzitumia katika kuona ya kwamba usafiri ama hali ya maisha kutoka point A to point B, wananchi wa Kenya wataweza kusafiri wakiwa na barabara njema. Vile vile Bwana Spika, kwamba uti wa mgongo katika nchi hii, Bwana Spika, ni ukulima. Tunajua kuna wakulima katika sehemu mbalimbali, wengine pengine katika sehemu za kaskazini ya Kenya ni watu ambao wana zaidi sana watumia hali ya mifugo. Tunasema kwamba katika yale maeneo ambao watu wanatoka tofauti tofauti, tuweze kupeana kipaumbele kwa huduma za wale watu wanaoishi kule. Kama sasa watu wa Northeastern, watu wanaoketi kule wanataka ng'ombe zao, wanataka ngamia zao, wanataka mahitaji fulani fulani, tunaona ya kwamba lazima gavana upande ule atie mkazo. Tukija upande wa wakulima, kuna sehemu tofauti tofauti za Kenya kuna wakulima. Tunataka pia magavana hizi pesa ambazo zitakwenda katika ziko katika serikali zetu mashinani waweze kuzingatia kuona ya kwamba wakulima wamepewa kipaumbele ili waweze kuwa na mashamba yao ambao wataweka rutuba, wataweka fertilizer, wataweza kuweka mbegu ili waweze kupata chakula kingi. Manake hakuna nchi ambayo inaweza kufaulu ndani ya Kenya, Bwana Spika, bila kuona ya kwamba chakula kinapatikana ili watu waweze kushiba, kufanya kazi kwa bidii na kuwe na maendeleo. Tunaita food security. Bwana Spika, mara nyingi tumeona waliosimama wanaopinga. Hatuwakatai, kupinga ni sawa, lakini sana ripoti hii imetengezwa na kamati. Hii ripoti ni ya kamati, si ripoti ya rais. Lakini watu tukiketi hapa kama maseneta tukianza kusintofahamu ya kwamba tunaongea habari ya taarifa aliyotoa rais ya mwaka wa 24 katika hili bunge letu, tukiileta hapa tukifananisha na hii ripoti, haitakuwa sawa. Tutakuwa tumekosa mwelekeo. Kitu ni kwamba ripoti ya rais iko kando na ripoti hii ambayo imetengenezwa na kamati yetu ya majadiliano katika bunge zote mbili, wakakubaliana katika hizi pesa, ni kwamba tunaongea habari ya pesa zitakazokwenda katika serikali za mashinani ili ziweze kusaidia wananchi wa Kenya. Bwana Spika, nikiweza pia kumaliza, nataka kusema ya kwamba wafanyi kazi wanaofanya katika serikali zetu za mashinani, wale wafanyi kazi, wazungu walisema, na uniruhusu nitumie lugha ya Kimombo, ya kwamba your first client is your employee and a happy worker is a productive worker. Kitu cha kwanza ambacho magavana wanatakana kuona ni kwamba wale wafanyikazi ambao wamewaandika ndani ya maofisi, tunashangaa kwamba sasa kuna sababu ndogo ndogo ambazo tunaweza kuziona zikitoka katika kila mahali katika Kenya, ya kwamba wamekosa kupewa mishahara. Hizi pesa tunasema hakuna anayetaka kufanya kazi baada ya siku 30 asione mshahara wake ndani ya mfuko, ili aende nyumbani akifurahi kuweza kutoa fees za watoto wake, kuweza kulisha bibi yake, kuweza kumvalisha bibi yake na watoto, ili nyumba ile iwe na raha. Tunaona sumazi zinatandaa katika mafamilia tofauti tofauti, kwa sababu ukiulizwa unasema mimi sina pesa za kulipa mishahara. Lakini sasa hakutakuwa na sababu ya kwamba wafanyikazi wetu wanaofanya katika wanaofanya kazi katika serikali za mashinani watakosa mishahara yao. Nasema ya kwamba kipao cha mbele wafanyikazi wenu wanaofanya katika kaunti zote 47 katika Kenya, hivi sasa pesa ziko, walipeni mishahara yao. Bwana Spika, nataka kumalizia. Na kimaliza ya kwamba nasema hii ripoti yetu tuliyoandika, mimi nataka kukubaliana nayo, kwa sababu ni ripoti ambayo imepeana mwelekeo, na ni ripoti ambayo imeeleza sababu gani tuliweza kukubaliana kuchukua hizo bilioni 387, tukakubali zile zingine kama 13 zipotee. Lakini hali sintofahamu ya Kenya ya kwamba uchumi hali yake pengine si uzuri, lakini sisi tunasema tu ya kwamba tunawaombea hao magavana waweze kuketi katika yale maofisi, waweze kukaa chini, kutafakari, kuona ya kwamba maji yatasambazwa, barabara zitapatikana, mbegu zitapatikana kupeleka kwa wakulima, hospitalini kutapatikana madawa, na hatimaye pia mishahara ya wananchi ambao wanafanya kazi katika serikali zetu za mashinani watapata mishahara yao kulinganishana na uwezo na kulinganishana na nguvu, na zile maeneo wanaofanya kazi wasifanye kazi kujivunja vifua alafu mishahara isiweze kupatikana. Kwa hiyo tunasema katika hii ripoti tunasisitiza zaidi, na mimi naisupport kwa sababu ni ripoti ambayo imetengenezwa na maseneta wenzetu, wameileta hapa, na sisi tunaona kwamba ripoti hii itasaidia vilivyo katika serikali zetu za mashinani. Asante Bwana Spika.
Honorable Senators, we seem to have a problem with the system. The system has hung. So I will require all of you to log out and then log in afresh. And don't worry about the... yes, it had already hanged, yeah. So please just log out and then log in so that we can reboot the system. I do have a list of the speakers. No, let's do it again. Can everybody log out and then wait for me? Wait for my instructions to log in. Log out. Sergeant at Arms, can you assist us to remove the cards which are in the system? Niko na majina ya watu vile kuongea. Very well, Senators, you can now log in again. Very well. Senator Mundingi Alexander.
Ruhusa niweze kuchangia mambo ya hela zile zinaenda katika kaunti zetu. Bwana Spika, naunga mkono kwa hii ripoti ambaye inaonyesha vile pesa itaenda katika mashinani. Ingawa hii pesa haitoshi kwa sababu nakumbuka mwaka jana Bwana Spika, kaunti zote 47 tulikuwa tumewapitishia bilioni 385. Lakini mwaka huu kabla mambo ya budget kupita tukawapitishia bilioni 1000. Lakini wakati ilirundi huku katika budget kuanguka, Bwana Spika, ikawa parliament walisema kaunti zote 47 Bwana Spika watapatiwa bilioni 380. Ikawa wamepunguza bilioni 5. Ikawa maseneta wameona hiyo ifai, na ndio kulisemekana kutatengenezwa kamati, Bwana Spika, ya mediation, na ndio tulichagua maseneta ambaye wale, Bwana Spika, tuliona wanafaa na wakaenda kukaa kikao na wale watu wa budget katika parliamenti yetu ya Kenya. Bwana Spika, ningesema hizi bilioni wakati walikaa kutoka kwa bilioni 380 wakawa sasa wamerudi kwa zile bilioni 385 na wakaanza safari hapo, na ndipo tunaona sasa ni kama waliongezea bilioni 2 ikawa bilioni 387. Kwa hiyo Bwana Spika, mimi naunga mkono. Ingawa hata hizi pesa haitoshi, yangu ni kuomba magavana hizi pesa zitakuja mashinani. Ile njia mzuri ni kuomba tu ile pesa wajaribu sana pesa nyingi iweze kwenda mashinani, na katika agriculture ndio key ya serikali na ndio key ya mwananchi, kwa sababu agriculture ndio kila kitu katika Kenya yetu. Mambo ya agriculture ndio iweze kufanya vizuri. Ningeomba kila, Bwana Spika, kila wondi ukute wameandika agricultural extension officer, ndio tuweze kuona kilimo itaendelea namna gani, kwa sababu mvua inanyesha, kuna problem ya agricultural officers hakuna, na pia mambo ya monyoko, unakuta mchanga inapepwa na maji. Kwa hiyo Bwana Spika, ningeomba hizi hela ikienda mashinani, kitu ya kwanza ni magavana wanjaribu kila county, governor county yake aandike extension officers, na pia kitu ingine angejaribu ni mambo ya afya, ndio watu wetu waweze kuonjeka, kwa sababu shinda ile iko mashinani ni mambo ya agriculture na mambo ya afya. Mambo ingine ya tatu ili hizi pesa wangejaribu ni parapara, ingawa mangavana wawezi kutengeneza zile parapara kubwa, lakini wangejaribu sana pesa zingine waweze kupeleka kwa parapara, ndio ile wakati wakulima watalima mazao zao iweze kwenda kuuzwa na njia ile inafaa. Bwana Speaker, mambo ya agriculture inashinda sana, kwa sababu kama Embu County kilimo ni tunawekelea njia ile inafaa. Kama Embu County kilimo yetu ni mambo ya majani, kahawa, makandamia, masiwa na maembe, na pia mura stroke muguka. Kwa hivyo ningependelea kaunti ya Embu iweze kupata pesa na ipeleke masinani, ndio wananchi aweze kupata kilimo ile inafaa. Kitu ingine watengenezewe ile water pans ndio weze kunjisaidia na ile pesa ya agriculture. Kitu ingine ningeomba upande wa agriculture, kwa sababu hizi pesa haisitoshi. Kuna serikali kuu ambaye ni ya Kenya iweze ile mahitaji ya counties, kila county iweze kutengenezwa ndamu kubwa. Kama Embu tunajua wametuahidi watatengenezea ambaye Kamomo ambaye itasaidia Mbere North na Dhambana ambaye itasaidia Mbere South na Manyata. Kwa hivyo ningeomba pia ile pesa zimembakia serikali kuu, serikali njuu ya kuinua kilimo, watu wa Embu County waweze kutengenezwa zile ndamu na kilimo ya Embu na economy itasaidika, na watu watapata kufanya kazi ile inafaa, na tutapata mazao ambaye ni mazuri, na pia economy ya Embu County njia ya usuru itaweza kuenda juu na serikali ya Kenya. Pia kitu ingine Bwana Speaker, ningeomba katika hizi pesa ama serikali kuu iweze kutusaidia wakati tutapata mazao. Saa ingine tumelima sana, iende ikawa hakuna mahali tutaweza kuuza mazao yetu, iweze kutusaidia njia hata kama ni saa ngambo tuweze kupata pahali tutauza mazao yetu. Kama ni mambo ya miraa tukumuguka ni mmea ambaye inaendelea na njia ile inafaa. Kwa hivyo Bwana Speaker, mimi naunga mkono. Ambaye upande mwingine ningeomba ni serikali ya county ni mambo ya afya. Pesa nyingi iende kwa hospitali yetu ya counties. Aswa tunajua health promoters wanafanya kazi nzuri, na nakumbuka ile budget ambaye ilianguka tulikuwa tumeongezea pesa, lakini tulikuwa asikia karibu wawache kulipwa misara, na ni kitu ya aibu sana, kwa sababu Bwana Speaker, serikali ya Kenya Kwanza wakati iliingia iliangalia wale watu kwa kipindi ya miaka yote hawakuwa pata pesa chochote, lakini sasa wakasema serikali kuu itatoa 5% na county 5%, na tukavurahia sana. Kwa hivyo ningeomba mangavana wafuatilie au watu, kwa sababu wako masinani, ati mtoto akizaliwa wameanza kuchukua ripoti zao, na wale wakina mama wazee wako manyumbani wameanza kuchukua ripoti zao, ndio kuweze kuonekana miaka ambayo itakuja kutakuwa na mipangilio ya magonjwa yote kwa kila binadamu. Kwa hivyo ninaunga mkono juu ya hela ya county. Pia hizi pesa ningesema pia upande ya hospitali haitoshi Bwana Speaker. Ningeomba pia serikali kuu iweze kusaidia serikali za county, ile hospitali kubwa waweze kupeleka mandawa na waweze kutengeneza hospitali iwe level 4 na level 5, ndio pia hiyo magonjwa tunasikia kama ni ugonjwa wa kansa na ugonjwa zile zingine. Na pia kuna wale watu wanalipwa na pesa ya county, pia madaktari, kuna wengine wanalipwa na pesa ya national government. Ningeomba serikali ya national government pia iweze kupeleka pesa masinani, ile pesa zingine zimembakia. Kwa hiyo Bwana Speaker, kitu ingine ingeweza kusaidia county zetu ni kila county kuna ile pesa ambayo imekuja kutoka nchi za ng'ambo ya kusaidia mambo ya kupanda upandaji wa miti juu ya climate change. Pia county government na national government waungane pamoja, ndio tuweze kupanda miti, ndio ndamu zile tutatengeneza iwache kukauka, ndio unakuta tunaendelea kupata mvua, ndio mazao yetu iweze kuendelea juu, ndio tuweze kutengeneza economy yetu. Na tukiendea hivyo Bwana Spika, nchi ya Kenya upande ya kilimo na upande wa afya na upande wa parapara tutaweza kuwa tunainua kilimo yetu. Bwana Spika, ile kitu ningekosoa ni kusema wale watu wanapinga hii mjadala. Nataka niwafahamishe, sio kumaanisha ati kama mimi sijui mambo ya Kiingereza ama Kiswahili Bwana Spika. Ile kitu nataka kusema, ninafahamu vizuri hii mjadala inaongea mambo ya era ya county, na hakuna mahali president ameingia kwa hii mambo ya era ya county ya national government. Ile kitu nasema nilikuwa na maanisha ni ati senator wetu ndio alikuwa na msemo na kukaa na kipindi ya MPs ndio aweze kupitisha. President anja kataa kupitisha ela zile tunapitisha, kwa sababu sisi tumepatiwa kazi na mwananchi tuweze kutetea devolution, na pia ikitoka hapa house iweze kwenda kwa parliament. Na parliament imekuwa na shida nyingi sana na magavana, kwa sababu unakuta wanapata era nyingi kuliko zile tunapatia county. Unakuta constituency moja Bwana Speaker inapata milioni 150 kwa parliament kwa MP moja. Pia hapo wamejiongezea pesa ya parapara wakajipatia milioni 60. Hapo hawa MP pia wakajipatia milioni 30 ya kutengeneza stima. Kwa hivyo sinda ya hizi pesa ya devolution sio makosa ya president, ni makosa ya MP. Kwa hivyo nataka kukosoa wale watu wanapinga hii mjadala, ni tukae chini, kwa sababu Biblia inasema watu wawili waweze kutembea bila kuelewanwa. Ni sisi tuelewanwe, na pia wakati ule mwingine tukae chini tuelewanwe na parliament, ndio tuweze kupatia watu mashinani era ya kutosha juu ya economy ya counties. Ya mwisho Bwana Speaker, ile ningeomba counties na governors, tafadhali kuna ile hela ambaye kule katika mashinani, kwa sababu tumeona hizi hela haitoshi kwa sababu ya kitu inaitwa pending bill na wage bill ambaye iliwachwa na ile magavana walikuwako. Ningeomba ile hela mnaokota huko mashinani muweze kuongezea, ndio ukute mnapata ile pesa Bwana Speaker, itasaidia kuongezea hii pesa tumempatia. Kwa sababu kama county ya Embu County government, ninginafurahia sana na ile governor ambaye ako huko sahi. Embu County ilikuwa imepangiwa kuokota milioni 900, lakini ule governor alikuwa kwa zamani alikuwa naokota milioni 350. Bwana Speaker, sahi ule governor aliyoko sahi, ile kitu inafanya ni muunga mkono, amefikisha milioni 750. Na hizo pesa ndio magavana wanakula huko kwa njia ya misosoro. Kwa hivyo naomba governor wa Embu County, umefanya kazi nzuri, lakini haujafikisha ile pesa. Inafaa kutoka milioni 750 ufikishe angalau bilioni 1 iweze kuongezea ile pesa ambaye itatoka katika huku mambo ya Senate. Kwa hivyo ningeomba uweze kujifunza na kaunti zile zingine, kwa sababu tumesikia kaunti nyingi imeweza kutafuta njia ya kuta pesa ya usuru huko mashinani. Kwa hivyo nashukuru kaunti ya Embu County na wale wafanyikazi mnaokota ile pesa. Jameni, ile line zote zinaweza kuharibia sisi. Ningeomba kaunti ya Embu County muweze kufunga, ndio tuweze kuona kama tutafika ile pahali inafaa. Bwana Speaker, unakuta kaunti zimekuwa na shinda hapa na pale upande wa hospitali. Ningeomba serikali iweze kuangalia. Nikimalizia Bwana Speaker, mambo ya treasury iko na shinda. Waziri ambaye wa fedha, ningeomba muweze kukumbaliana na counties vile kila mwezi, kama serikali ya Kenya Kwanza wakati iliingia, rais wetu alisema kila mwezi mpaka county iwe ikipata pesa Bwana Speaker. Na saa hii juzi tumesikia kama ni miezi 2, miezi 3 county haijapata pesa. Kwa hiyo naomba waziri wa fedha na pia na wale watu wafanya kwa fedha muweze kupatia county zetu kila mwezi pesa, ndio tuweze devolution iweze kuwa mashinani na tuweze kuona vile serikali ya Kenya Kwanza inafanya, kwa sababu inasema ni pesa mkononi. Kwa hiyo Bwana Speaker, mimi nikiwa senator wa Embu County naunga mkono, na mimi ni Daktari Alexander Munyimundigi. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Senator Samson Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity to make a few comments on the report of mediated version of the Senate and the National Assembly. From the onset, Mr. Speaker, I need to say that I'm disappointed by the outcome of the process. It looks like, Mr. Speaker, we did succumb to the whims and wishes of the National Assembly on this discussion. Mr. Speaker, while East counties continue to struggle with challenges of corruption, underdevelopment, poor performance, it is not justifiable to deny them resources. Mr. Speaker, when we propose 400 billion, his colleagues went us bashing us in funerals and baby showers and bridal showers. Mr. Speaker, to preside over where counties have not received adequate resourcing. The reasoning we proposed 400 billion was not out of nowhere, Mr. Speaker. 400 billion was enough for counties. The fact that we are cutting it to 387 billion, Mr. Speaker, is quite unfortunate. Many people would want to say additional of 3 billion or 7 billion because in the last session it was 385 billion. Mr. Speaker, I feel disappointed that the only way we can remove the hit on the development of this country from national government is to resource counties to be able to do their functions as per the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. So this 387 billion, Mr. Speaker, is not sufficient to counties. But I want to appeal, Mr. Speaker, even on this issue of equalization fund of 8 billion, we are yet to release as per Article 204. The money has yet to be released, Mr. Speaker. You have heard we have been push and pull here, Mr. Speaker. Even on the issue of concurrent functions like disaster, Mr. Speaker, I expected the national government to shoulder the responsibility of community health promoters, CHVs, fully, because it's not expensive. Anyway, health is devolved. I expected county national government to shoulder the issue of industrial parks, where 250 million by county and 250 million by national government, because these are concurrent functions. Mr. Speaker, the biggest danger to devolution is clawback of its function, number one. Number two is the unbundling of functions that should follow costs, Mr. Speaker. There are many functions that are still being retained by national government, yet it should be unbundled to the counties, including function follow money. Mr. Speaker, for example, health is supposed, the function of health is fully devolved. The only role the national government comes is on policy, Mr. Speaker. And you remember the MES, medical equipment supplies, in the last session, Mr. Speaker, we were fighting very hard, Mr. Speaker, over the issue of medical equipment supplies. It became one of the biggest rip-off to counties, Mr. Speaker, up to date. So I think, Mr. Speaker, even as we say the issue of road maintenance levy fund, Mr. Speaker, I still insist that that money belongs to county governments. 11 billion Kenya shillings. And I want to ask members of National Assembly, why are they being greedy? They are getting close to 40 billion, Mr. Speaker, through CDF, which under the Supreme Court, Mr. Speaker, it has been ruled that CDF is unconstitutional, Mr. Speaker. And I want to borrow the words of the AUC nominee, Mr. Speaker. When he read his statement, the party leader of Senator Richard Onyonga, when he said the role of Parliament, both National Assembly and the Senate, should be and must be oversight. It is high time that we scrap totally CDF, Mr. Speaker. There is no need. How can you preside, oversight the money that you are spending yourself? Why don't we take all money and give it to counties? Then all of us oversight. Let them oversight national agencies, we oversight counties. Even this RLMF, 11 billion, they want to add themselves over Kera. Kera and Kura is unconstitutional, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy people in court are arguing that Kera and Kura are unconstitutional, Mr. Speaker. Because as we talk today, the members of National Assembly have all hostage Kera to do their own bidding, Mr. Speaker. So the issue of CDF, which every county is receiving, every constituency is receiving of 100 million, and the argument, Mr. Speaker, the misnomer I hear on the streets is very simple. You know, CDF is doing more. Oh, we have seen CDF. CDF was started in 2003. It is the high time we consolidate all the funds, do division of revenue to national government and to the counties, then oversight both, Mr. Speaker. And I agree in the principle of AUC candidate Raila Odinga when he says, let members of parliament do the oversight of the funds that they appropriate. The budget making process, and I had a member here saying that the president, and I want to do pro bono legal advice on the floor of the House to all Kenyans. President and National Executive are not involved in the budget-making process. The budget-making process is an exclusive domain of this National Assembly and the Senate. It was decided in the petition number 3 of 2013 by the Supreme Court, Mr. Speaker. So we should correct Ms. Norma that the National Executive nor the President does not participate in any way in budget-making process, Mr. Speaker, and therefore it should be handled. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, counties continue the issue of pending bills. Mr. Speaker, are you aware most of our businessmen in Garissa, in Nandi, in Kisii, have died following up for their pending payments by the counties, Mr. Speaker? As of June 2024, Mr. Speaker, counties owed pending bills of 158 billion. Including Garissa, your businessmen and women are suffering because they cannot be paid by counties. I saw the governor of, who is the chair of finance, the governor of Kakamega, telling us the biggest danger to devolution is control of budget. It is not. What governors are doing is voiding payments. They take money to pay Haji, but they pay Aaron. That's what they are doing. And the control of budget must be on lookout to ensure the proper approvals of the money. We will not allow governors to run away with corruption. I saw the chair of finance and I was worried. What is he talking about? The biggest problems in functionality of counties are governors themselves, because they do voiding of payments and steal the money. Why do we have, Mr. Speaker, after resolution of this House through pending bills, we did say money should be paid all across the counties, 158 billion as of June 2024. No one has paid. Governors, the other day, there was a misnomer, and I was embarrassed, Mr. Speaker. They were saying they have not received money. When the CS of National Treasury released the report, they had received up to October 158 billion Kenya shillings. They are yet to relieve November, Mr. Speaker. And they are lying to Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, led by the chair of Wajir, Ahmed Abdullahi, where Wajir is dysfunctional. As we talk today, and I look at the CBK accounts, Wajir County as county government has 2.6 billion lying. Kisii has 6.7 billion lying in CBK. Nandi has 2 billion lying in CBK. Yet the chairperson of COG is telling the country there is no money, yet they have their money in CBK accounts of 2.6 billion. Yet people of Wajir cannot arrest drugs, cannot access roads. Even in Nandi, Mr. Speaker, we have 2 billion. Yet the governor is basically lamenting and perambulating and talking in funerals and giving out handouts and buying djembe sticks and buying machetes, Mr. Speaker. As if we are giving them money to prepare for war, Mr. Speaker. It is very unfortunate, and I feel embarrassed, and I want to tell Inspector General of Police, Douglas Kanja, some of us in Nandi no longer believe in functionality of security. Somebody was arrested when we went to occupy Nandi County Assembly on the ad hoc report, where Governor Sang cannot account for more than 10 billion Kenya shillings worth of projects. Someone senior within Nandi County Executive was arrested with machetes and djembes. The only thing that the police did in Nandi is to give him lavidavis. As we talk today, one young man was attacked by the name de Gitaro in Nandi Hills town. The person who attacked is a governor's goon. Is here to be arrested today. The DCIO and DC Amin and IG Douglas Kanja are doing about it, nothing about it. The goonism is Nandi is the order of the day. Anybody. I saw even in Dr. Ondari's funeral's father. Goons have taken over funeral services in Kisii, Mr. Speaker. It is very unfortunate, and I saw Senator Onyonga and Madam Donya, Mr. Speaker. We are not appropriating monies to counties to run goonism. The way, Mr. And I am embarrassed. I am disappointed by Nandi County security team that up to today, Mr. Speaker, you can even check in media. They were goons.